King,
Here.
McDonald,
Here.
and Paseke.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you very much. And now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now have a moment of silence. Thank you. And now I'll ask our moderator to make an announcement on public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a reminder that during presentations, of which we have two coming up in a very short time, there won't be public comment during those, but members of the public are welcome to speak to those items in general public comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll get on to the presentations. Our first presentation tonight is with the Technology Committee report on broadband. And I will ask Nancy Sands, from our Economic Development and Open Government Department, and the staff liaison to the Tech Committee, to take it from here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, and members of the public. Thank you so much for providing time on tonight's agenda for this presentation. As many of you know, the Technology Advisory Committee has had, the city has had a Technology Advisory Committee since 2006. Currently, the committee, which is sometimes known by its acronym TAC, has 5 seats, which must be filled by Petaluma residents. And if you could move to the next screen, please. Our current members are Dylan Lloyd, our chair, Stephen Kirshenmon, our vice chair, Steve Rangusis, and Joshua Simmons. The TAC meets monthly and is subject to requirements of the Brown Act. Like other city committees, it functions in an advisory capacity only. It does not develop policies or direct staff work. And just to be clear, tonight's presentation does not constitute a plan or a proposal for the council to vote on. It's just a chance to share information about research the TAC has done over the past year on ways to support the delivery of high-speed internet via fiber to the home. And at this time, I wanted to introduce our presenter for this evening, Dylan Lloyd, who is our TAC chair. So take it from here, Dylan.
Thank you, Nancy. Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you for having me here tonight. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Dylan Lloyd, and I'm the chair of the Technology Advisory Committee. I'm here this evening to tell you about research the committee has been doing on the topic of expanding and improving broadband access in Petaluma. This research aligns with the committee's mission, as stated in our bylaws, which is to promote access to electronic information and community resources while protecting individual privacy and free expression. We do that by understanding the impact of various technology changes, suggesting technology-related policy changes, and examining and recommending best practices from other jurisdictions. Before I tell you what we did and what we learned, I want to take a step back and clarify what we mean by the term broadband. Broadband is a catch-all phrase, a fancy word for high-speed internet access. Without getting too technical, let me describe the 3 ways high-speed internet access is delivered to our computers, phones, and other devices. One way is through fiber networks installed in the ground, or in some cases, along existing above-ground utility poles. A second is through cellular technology, where data comes from fiber backhauls and then moves through the air from a cell tower to our mobile devices. The third way is satellite technologies. Here, bits and bytes travel across fiber and cellular technologies down to Earth, then are beamed up to space and back down to Earth again. Fiber, cellular, and satellite technologies work together to move data around the globe. But practically speaking, the speed at which data is delivered to our devices, whether home, work, or on the go, depends on the technology used in the last leg of the journey, referred to the last mile of the network. Most of our research touched on ways to expand fiber-based broadband networks for two reasons. One, fiber is the dominant technology used in the last mile networks within the city limits. And two, the City Council's goal of expanding broadband access is specific to fiber-based networks. So why did we decide to explore this topic? Why is high-speed internet access and broadband so important? Simply put, the internet is everything now. Since the mid-1990s, when the first commercial web browsers were launched, our society has been moving from being primarily in-person or paper-oriented to one reliant on electronic interactions. We all know that the COVID pandemic accelerated the shift, bringing nearly every aspect of our society online, including education, healthcare, government services, economic transactions, and social interactions. In this new age, affordable, reliable, high-speed internet access is no longer a luxury or even something nice to have. It is a necessity, as important as other utilities such as electricity and phone service. We started our process of discovery with the following assumptions. One, parts of our community are not well served. Internet is too slow or maybe too expensive for them. Two, fiber-based internet access would be cheaper, faster, and much more reliable if more providers were serving the Petaluma area. Currently, there are three. We have AT&T, Sonic, and Comcast. In some neighborhoods, only have one provider, thus driving up the cost in that neighborhood. By making it easier and less expensive to lay fiber, the city would attract new providers and or encourage existing providers to expand and or upgrade their service. Experts. With these thoughts in mind, we invited many experts to share their experience, insights, and best practices. This included nonprofits, as well as other agencies, people like Next Century Cities, which is an amazing service to different government agencies in the country. The County of Sonoma with their broadband initiative, and the Petaluma City School District and what they've done during the COVID pandemic, especially when all the kids were remote learning. Providers such as AT&T, Sonic, and Comcast as well, to see what their thoughts were. And we talked to city staff in economic development, the city engineering department, and the traffic engineer, as well as IT. We learned that a major barrier to entry for providers is the initial cost of laying down fiber, as well as the cost of maintaining and upgrading existing networks. The assumption is that municipality lowers or eliminates these costs. It will attract more providers, lowering the cost for consumers and all Petaluma residents. One way municipalities can lower provider costs is to lay down fiber itself and then lease it to providers. Although this is not a realistic or desirable option for the city of Petaluma, it is a strategy that the County of Sonoma is pursuing, and eventually there might be an opportunity for city residents to benefit from that. There's lots of other strategies as well, which include coordinating with multiple providers to install fiber or above ground equipment at the same time. For example, during street construction or renovation. Incorporating broadband development and choice into planning requirements. Making sure, when we build new residences that those go into there, the fiber goes into those residential areas. Assigning staff or consultants to identify gaps in broadband coverage and then working with those providers to address those gaps. Finding ways to decrease the time it takes for broadband projects to go through the permitting process. We learned a lot of things, and part of our research included talking to each of the three main broadband providers in Petaluma, Sonic, AT&T, as well as Comcast. We asked each of the providers about their current presence in Petaluma and if they plan to expand their services here. We also asked what the city could do to support expansion and improvements. All three providers reported that they had added new service areas and made significant upgrades to their networks over the past 2 years in response to the pandemic. The providers also discussed the programs available to low-income families to subsidize the cost of monthly service. Some of these programs were in place prior to the pandemic, but received a significant boost thanks to the COVID-related funding. Both AT&T and Comcast identified broadband adoption as an ongoing business challenge. The providers noted that there are members of our community who do not have broadband service because the community members believe they can't afford it, or they don't have the right training or equipment, or they believe they actually don't need broadband service. The providers asked for the city's help to promote their subsidized programs and find community partners for digital literacy programs. In general, the providers reported having a good relationship with the city, and the consensus was that while permitting could always go faster, in most cases, the city's permitting process was neither a barrier to nor an incentive for broadband expansion. And there were a few issues identified, including one that involved fiber mounting to utility poles as well. What we learned, on our existing efforts is that the utility departments have quarterly meetings. They held quarterly meetings with some of these companies to actually make sure they're on the same page as they go forward. We have a new digital permits and planning hub that really has increased the permitting process and made things easier for the providers. And we feel like more effort can be used to strengthen the relationship with providers and identify opportunities as well as barriers to success, which has already started inside the city. The new digital permits and planning hub should make permitting for broadband projects easier. And broadband can and should be incorporated into the general plan. Planning and legal are also working on a telecommunications policy that will have overlap with broadband also. So what's missing here? The state of California has a map of broadband carriers with estimated upload-download speeds listed. As part of its Access Sonoma Broadband initiative, the County of Sonoma asked residents to do a broadband speed test and submit that data to the county. This information is helpful, but we feel the city would benefit from a more complete picture of how our community members access high-speed internet, including where they use it. Home, maybe in the home, maybe at work, maybe in school, maybe in the car, and they probably use multiple places on multiple devices nowadays. And also the types of devices they use and their feeling about the cost and quality of that service currently. We feel that conducting a community survey, perhaps in conjunction with the school districts and the healthcare district, would be one way to gain that picture. The input from that survey could be used to encourage existing providers to invest in our community, as well as inform policies related to broadband service in multi-unit dwellings and broadband service provided through cellular technologies. Based on what we learned, we recommend that the city do a few things. One, leverage opportunities to lay fiber in upcoming Petaluma Boulevard South and Rainier roadway projects if we need to, and work with the providers to do that. Identify ways to promote broadband access and equity into the planning process. Continue to monitor county efforts to improve broadband, as well as monitor federal and state funding for broadband efforts. We feel we could also work with nonprofits, people like PPSC and COTS, to connect underserved populations with digital literacy programs and broadband subsidies. We would also like to continue to strengthen the relationships with fiber-based broadband providers through quarterly meetings on the engineering and the business economic development side. We would like to launch the community survey with a special outreach to the Latinx community, and also identify appropriate ways to incorporate cellular technology into last mile systems. So what is our ask? Following up on these recommendations will take resources, not only staff time, but also potential funding for a community survey. We ask that council include expanding broadband access in its 2022-2023 goals and priorities, and that funds be reserved to develop a community survey. In terms of next steps for TAC, we remain committed to exploring all the different ways to bring high-speed internet to our community. And I just want to thank you for your time tonight, and it was greatly appreciated that I could be here to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. And if we can stop sharing the screen so I could see if anybody on the council has a question that this brought up for them. I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand. Okay, well, I do have a couple questions, and the survey idea I think is really good. And are you looking, when you're saying you're asked, are you looking at as a, when we go to our goals, that the tech committee wants the council to include money for the survey, or exactly what was it that you were asking there? I missed that.
Yeah, basically, yeah, we're asking for some funding just for a survey for the community to be able to, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
To make sure, yeah.
Okay, so maybe it would be helpful to kind of flesh that out a little bit as to you know, the purpose of the survey. You know, like, you want to know where people are, what people feel they need, and how they think they can get there. Okay, all right. So that would be helpful, at least for me, for going forward on this.
Okay.
So thank you. Okay, I see that Council Member Fisher has her hand up, followed by Council Member McDonald.
I do, and it's not so much, well, maybe it's a question of staff. You know, broadband and internet service is not talked about in our general plan, and I presume that we're wanting to put it in this update of the general plan, but in looking at existing conditions, it's one of those existing conditions that we're not looking at because it's not in our general plan right now. And so I guess the question of staff is that, you know, is that an intention in moving forward with the general plan of getting that existing condition information above and beyond the survey so that we can include our goals and policies for internet in the general plan?
Nancy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I would say yes, that's something that we that we would like to have done. I mean, again, part of our reason for being here today is just to update the council on what we've been doing over the last year and kind of have the discussion about what the possibilities are. Again, because we do feel that the committee feels that this is such an important issue, and it has been part of the goals in the past that let's really understand what the existing conditions are, and then develop ways to work that into the general plan.
Thank you. Heather, did you want to add to that?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So we have talked about it as part of the general plan update, and some of it when we have gone to the tech committee to update them on the update process, and that's their feedback. I can't recall whether anything was mentioned in the utilities section or of the existing conditions report, but if it's not in the existing general plan, if we don't have policies or regulations to kind of report out as existing conditions, it might be outside of what's our existing framework that we looked at in the existing conditions report, but that doesn't mean that we won't be talking about it or including it, and any future things like a survey could inform that as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Council Member McDonald.
Thank you. Great presentation. Appreciated. And I'd like to second the Councilwoman's comments there. I do think as we move forward and vision the next general plan in the next 20 years, it's an essential of life in the next 20 years. I mean, it's essential today, and it's more so for the next 20 years we're visualizing in this plan. So I'm excited to see it in the general plan. Also, I hope that there's an actual report or summary or charts, spreadsheets of the data you learned, especially, I mean, that could be posted on the city's website. And I'm excited to see to have posted the subsidy programs and make sure that everybody knows there's access. I think all too often we don't access things that are established. So marketing. Yep. And then the comment on Rainier, I'm hoping that's the Rainier Road diet that we're talking about, element there. And since there's no street cut, that might be different than a project like South Boulevard, and might not be today's project, but just part of the overall. I am interested in seeing the map coverage of the three providers you mentioned. So I'm looking forward to the committee's published report. Thanks.
Thank you. Council Member King, followed by Vice Mayor Posake.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. One, when we're looking at a community survey, obviously I'd like to see what the costing is on that. I don't know if that's can be done at the committee level, or if it has to come back to a broader staff discussion. But I do support the recommendation from the committee to look at expanding broadband access in our upcoming goals. And perhaps that's the kind of thing you make as an ongoing goal as we go through projects. But thank you for the presentation, very informative. Appreciate your time on this too, to the committee and staff.
Okay, Vice Mayor Pusake, followed by
Yeah, I'd
Councilmember
also like
Barnacle.
to thank the committee and the staff for the report. I think that it is very important to get last mile access to our less advantaged communities. And so I hope that the survey, if and when it's done, will have questions specifically directed at some of the issues that come up. Thanks. That's all I have.
And Councilmember Barnacle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Chair Lloyd. My question is, you mentioned leveraging roadway projects and as we're building out certain things, is that not being done currently? I guess I'm a little, have you found other cities with really strong model policies for how to leverage roadway projects and that sort of thing?
Some cities have stronger policies to kind of like make sure they're, everything's being done to kind of put X conduit or fiber in the ground. So I think from our perspective, we found out, and I'll let Nancy add to this, but we found out that, if we can get some more, make sure that these engineering meetings that happen, and make sure the providers are actually there and just work with them more to make sure they understand what projects are ongoing, and that make sure they're in the same page as us. I think that would help a lot. And Nancy, I don't know if you add to that.
No, that covers it. Just, it's really about building better relationships with the providers, in terms of we can't, we can only encourage them to expand at this point. And so if by having better relationships with them, better communication about what roads are going to be open, or then, they might look at the situation and go, oh, okay, well, let's put that fiber down here sooner. We just want to make sure we're capitalizing on whatever opportunities we can.
Awesome. My feedback then is, as you look and you take this to the next level, if there's other cities that have really strong policies in place or something like that, keep elevating those examples for us to look at from a policy perspective, in addition to the community survey and all that. But thank you again for the effort.
Thank you. Councilmember McDonald, you had another bite at the apple here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, a little bit because my background is in street work and utilities, and so I agree. Getting coordinated with utilities is the key element here. Not that they'll ever use abandoned utility as conduit or anything like that. All it would probably be fresh installation in the streets. But the key thing to coordinate utilities is to be able to publish a multi-year advance notice of what the city's intentions are. And until now, I think we've been kind of up against the wall, but with our bond on Measure U, we should be able to identify ahead of time all the reconstruction streets for like a 5-year window. And that really helps gets the utilities in scheduled early and avoids panic of overlays and things like that. So that's a great thing you're working on there.
Thank you. Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. I do. A question has come up for me. So if we were to alert our carriers that are now existing in the city that we're opening up Petaluma Boulevard South, would all 3 of them want to lay down fiber cable in that street for their 3 different services, or would it just be one cable?
I don't really have an answer to that question. I'm sorry. That's something that we could discuss with them in more detail. But that's kind of the idea, is that they would, we would have to figure out, is it 3 different types of cable? Is it one cable that they all tap into? The technical aspect of that, I don't know exactly how that works, but as Dylan was saying, there are other cities that do this on a regular basis, and the next step for us would be to be looking at those models more closely.
Yeah, and it depends on the provider. They have different They have different options. Like AT&T, Comcast usually like to lay their own fiber. Sonic is willing to tap into other like fiber that's already laid if it's not active already. So it really depends on the carrier as well.
So would an alternative be that we own the cable and we lay it down and then lease it out to them?
We did look at that, yes. We felt like it was a pretty cost prohibitive thing for Petaluma to do. So we didn't think that was something that was capable. And we have pretty strong partnerships with the 3 providers. And it comes out that if you can get the 3 providers to every home, if you can get fiber to every home and all the 3 providers can either, yes, if they can tap into it or if they lay their own cable, that drives down the cost for everybody, right? Because they have competition to that home and it drives down the cost for everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thanks. And thanks for your volunteerism on the committee.
Mayor Barrett, you're on mute.
Thank you for that. I was Heather Hines.
I just wanted to follow up on Councilwoman Fisher's comment. There was the existing condition report under infrastructure does touch on telecom and fiber optics. And so there is some information based on what the existing conditions are and some issues and opportunities in the existing condition report that came out.
But it doesn't talk about where the existing facilities are and that sort of thing and what they're radiating and information.
No, it doesn't go that far. It
Yeah.
does reference it. So at least it's a kind of a
Input.
placeholder, you know, but no, it's not to that degree.
Yeah. So I think that's what we need in order to have a facilitated discussion on it. But thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Sands.
Yes, I just wanted to go back to the questions about mapping. It's really, we found that it was really difficult to get a comprehensive map of where the fiber is laid and who has the fiber and where it's laid. It seems like it's, I mean, I almost want to call it like the holy grail, that there isn't a map that exists out there. And that's why it's important to look at what the state has and then kind of overlay it with what the county has been gathering in terms of speed test data. And then the other layer would be if we did a survey to really understand, you know, it might be the case that the state says, oh yeah, this provider serves this particular area and they have this level of service, but in reality, that service is not as high as it doesn't meet the maximum. Maybe it meets the minimum. So that's where that information is not as easily out there right now. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was in terms of laying municipalities laying their own fiber. We did make the assumption that would be something that would be too expensive for the city. I mean, the county is doing something similar, and it takes a long, you know, it's been taking a long time. But if that's something that you wanted us to investigate, then that would be direction that we would, you know, need to get from you and then move forward on that.
Well, thank you very much for this presentation. And I will say that several of the public comments that came into us today included a link to the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, which owns its own optic fiber. And it's a very interesting article. And if it's not something that's available, I will send it to staff and make sure that they can make it available to the tech committee. It would maybe be something that, you know, I don't want to put anything more on staff's plate, but looking at a regional solution to this with Sonoma Clean Power, with the county, with Marin County, you know, this could be something that we want to know. But I really, you know, that's another issue. I really want to thank you for taking on this, the task of finding out what exactly is there, because as Nancy said, it's really difficult to know where all these lines actually are. We know where they're supposed to be or where they say they are, but we will find that out when we find out that people aren't getting the service because they're answering the survey, and letting us know where the strong spots are and where the weak spots are. But I also think that we should use this information to the city's advantage in negotiating with our providers to help the city deliver the best service to everybody who's here. So again, thank you very much, Tech Committee. This is a great job to everybody who's on that committee and our staff. I really appreciate all this work. So with that, we're going to go on to our next presentation. And this is a presentation on recycled water program updates. And I will have our staff member, Jason Farnsworth, who oversees our Ellis Creek water treatment plant, do the introductions here.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Barrett. Madam Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. I'm Jason Farnsworth, Deputy Director of Environmental Services. And tonight we have for you a very exciting presentation on recycled water and some of the different programming aspects of it to help kind of update the council and inform them on how the program is running and some opportunities for some future growth. With me tonight, I have Mr. Akeem Fahan with us. Akeem is new to the city. He came to us here in the last 3 months as a management analyst. He brings with him lots of experience in stormwater, pretreatment, collections, water distribution, and water treatment. And so he's been a very valuable asset and a great team for the Ellis Creek team. And so we're excited to have him on board with us. And so with that, I'll turn the first part of this presentation over to Akeem to kind of walk you through some of the different program elements. Akeem? Akeem, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm not muted.
There you go.
Hello.
There you go.
Okay. Madam Mayor, once again, my name is Akeem.
Keen, I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you move maybe closer to your microphone?
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay. All right.
And Akeem, don't move.
Okay. Sorry about that. Next slide, Patrick. Thanks. All right, so this slide is an image of an aerial view of Ellis Creek in our wastewater treatment facility. In this image here, on the right side, you'll see our headworks. To the left, you see our secondary treatment, and up top to the front are our holding pond. Next slide. A brief background in regards to Ellis Creek. First and foremost, Ellis Creek was the first recycled water facility. Second, Ellis Creek utilizes landfill water to provide a life of disinfection.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I am actually not hearing almost anything that Akeem is saying.
I can pick it up. That's helpful.
Well, someone needs to.
Okay, I'll pick it up. Thank you, Akeem. So Ellis Creek leads the way. Ellis Creek was the first city in the North Bay to develop a recycled water program, and that was primarily done to meet the city's discharge prohibition of its wastewater permit. Ellis Creek facility uses a blended technology. We use both technology as well as natural processes with our polishing wet lines to treat the water and distribute it out either via a recycled water or discharge to the Petaluma River. We also treat roughly around 4 million gallons of inflows of regular wastewater throughout the plant for the day. So next slide, please. Why recycle water? Water resiliency is important to the city, and recycled water helps support that water resiliency. It provides potable water offsets for in-town use, as well as aquifer drawdowns for our area aquifer for ag customers. One of the limitations and the reason that we have a recycled water program from its inception was the plant's permit to discharge wastewater to the Petaluma River gave us a prohibition where we're not actually able to discharge from May 1st to October 20th. And so that was the impetus of the recycled water program. Next slide. So currently, under our program, we have several different uses approved and in our permitting process. We have institutional irrigation, which includes schools and parks. We have golf course irrigation, which is primarily just Rooster Run and Adobe Creek. We have industrial commercial or industrial construction. You'll see Recology and the construction program is a big add this year to help kind of support the drought, where we use the recycled water for dust suppression. We have agricultural irrigation and commercial irrigation. Next slide, please. So year over year, recycled water users by trend, each one of those different categories, we've had a lot of growth in our program, specifically with agricultural irrigation, as well as industrial and construction. This year, you'll notice that there was a large swing in userships. As we brought on that recycled water program for construction sites, the number of users ticked up quite a lot for construction. Next slide, please. So as we move forward with the program and as we continue to plan and go through a master planning process, if this, part of the direction was to change some of those user groups or add user groups, such as the residential user groups, we would need to work through the different agencies here to try to amend and renegotiate some of the terms in the permit to make it a little less onerous to have different user types in the program. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite slides for recycle water program. This slide, and I'll spend a little bit of time on it, really gives us a big snapshot view of the program and what it's kind of doing long term and looking back and moving forward in different projections. So first we have the influent, which is inflow to the plant, which is water coming in. If we have, and that's represented by blue on the graph. And you'll see year over year, it's a large graph, it's a large number, roughly 2 billion gallons a year. So on average, the city will bring in anywhere from 1.6 to 2 billion gallons a year in inflows. Inflows are comprised of both the daily sanitary sewer flows, as well as inflow and infiltration during wet weather events. And the large swings that you see in the inflow will be based on those wet weather events and the amount of water that the plant receives during those rain events. Each one of these years has 3 different graphs on it, or 3 different categories on it. We have the inflows, we have the water that we send out to the river, which is represented in the orange. And then we have recycled water, which is represented in purple. Both the recycled water and the river discharge, if you add those 2 together, you get close to what the influent is. And so you'll see the different ratios each year over year. The river discharge, as you can see from 2014 to 2019, the ratio of river discharge to recycled water is quite large. We were sending a lot of water to the river, and the majority of the water went to the river those years. Whereas if you look closer to 2020 and 2021, you'll see that it's closer. We're almost 50%, our goal. Now looking kind of long term and what is the trends of the system doing year over year, we are receiving less influent to the plant, and that could be it's primarily wet weather flows during rain events is the reason that you see that downflow. You'll also see a decrease in river discharge year over year. As the plant tries to change management strategies and produce more recycled water, we're changing the amount of water that's going to the river. So we're trying to reduce that water going to the river. And then the water that we're sending out for reuse, our recycled water program, is increasing year over year. And the goal of the recycled water program is to reduce or eliminate discharges, river discharges, and maximize the beneficial use of the water. So let's take the orange column, let's zero it out, and let's take the purple column and bring it all the way up to the blue. So we have parity of what we're sending out, what comes in and what goes out with recycled water. That's easier said than done, but nonetheless the goal and what we strive for. So the ratio of river discharge to recycled water discharge is tightening. In the next two slides, we'll kind of walk through some of the management changes that we've done to help try to tighten that, and then maybe even exceed it in the years to come, and then reverse it and get the purple bar all the way up to the influent. So next slide, please. So historically, and this goes back to the original inception, first in the North Bay, we were dealing with a discharge prohibition and thus a recycled water program. So what the city did to try to meet that objective was we went out and we entered into a limited number of long-term use contracts with large-scale users. So we needed to have some stability in the program, and we need to be able to count on the users to take the water in both wet and dry years so that we could meet that discharge prohibition of the NPDES permits. And so the contracts bind the users in both wet and dry years to take agreed upon allotments during the prohibition. The contracts have helped facilitate program stability, and they've enabled long-term permit compliance. They worked. We met our objectives. We met our permit compliance. Resulting from the contracts, though, we have reduced the city's flexibility to pivot in times of unusual circumstances. However, we're working to help mitigate that. And then when a user drops out of the program, or the property changes ownership or use, oftentimes we cannot meet that new use of the property, or the new property owner has a different intent for the property and we lose that property. And so the magnitude of an impact to the program is very great when you have a limited number of long-term contracts. So to help improve this cycle, next slide, please. We've taken some managerial steps to help facilitate this program expansion. And so what we've done is we've entered into an expanded number of reduced term use contracts with both large and medium scale users. And the next is the key thing to growing the program, which is storage as a key component. Storage is essential for us to grow the program. We have a very limited recycled water storage that we can send out at any one time. And so as we want to send water out or expand the season, how do we tack on February, March, April to the recycled water season, and then the other end of it, November and December? Well, we have to have storage as an option. We've got to be able to send the water out to facilities when we have the water available, and not necessarily when we don't. Our program is during the recycled water season is very much hand to mouth, because we have very limited storage. What we're producing is what we're sending out that day. It's not drawing from a basin. We're producing and sending out that day. So storage is a key component to future program growth. With that storage, we've expanded the season. We've got use now from starting in February all the way through to May. And then we extended out from October to the end of October into November into December. And so we're sending water out now when we have it available versus just during this prohibition season that the contracts originally intended. So the expanded network that we've gone out and tried to establish has reduced the risk. There's more users, and so each user is less significant, and it reduces the risk while still maintaining that same program stability and long-term permit compliance. It's important. Again, same general model concepts still reduce the city's flexibility to pivot. The expanded user network provides a smaller impact when a user drops from the program, a property sells or use changes. And so it's a smaller mitigating impact. And so it's a little easier to manage that as we go. Next slide, please. So to move this program forward and to take it, so we can take the recycled water to be on parity with the inflows to the plant. A master plan update. The last time the master plan came to the city for development was in 2004. That was prior to the city actually even providing tertiary treated water. We were still at that time providing secondary water. So a master plan update in this time with our new treatment abilities is warranted, and it'll also help kind of identify priorities of where the council would like to take the recycled water in the city. To the west side, what are the urban opportunities that we have, potable offset, as well as identifying different storage basins regionally that we can send the water to when it's available. Depending on the master plan outcome, there may be some agency approvals that we need to walk through and change. Infrastructure upgrades will result from that planning effort. And then user contracts, additions, subtractions, or modifications will be needed. Next slide, please. So the steps that are currently underway, secure grant funding for the master plan. Tonight we have on the agenda a grant match with the State Water Board. So we're bringing that to you tonight to get that. And so we're very excited about that program. We are continuing to add storage capacity to the portfolio. We're actively looking for new users as well as existing users to convert some basins into recycled water basins so that we can deliver the water when we have it, not necessarily when they need it on demand. And so it provides that program flexibility and gives us that ability. In the current CIP budget, there is the Tertiary Expansion program, which lets us produce more recycled water on a daily basis. However, it needs to be supported with the storage component to really become very beneficial. And then install more purple pipe. Let's continue to minimize continue efforts to minimize the discharge to the Petaluma River and maximize that beneficial use of the water as we kind of move the program forward. And so with that, I believe that's the last slide. I have questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. And I'm sorry we were having technical difficulties with you, Mr. Fahin. So I'm going to go over to our questions from council members, and maybe your comments can be heard at this time to answer questions. I'm not sure if that was temporary or what. Councilmember Barnacle had his hand up first, followed by Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Great presentation. I just want to echo that title, that Petaluma leads the way, or Ellis Creek leads the way. Having been on the North Bay Water Reuse Board, I've heard multiple people reference Petaluma's leadership and the efforts at Ellis Creek, so I don't think they're understating that at all. My question, knowing how important storage is to our next wave of expansion, are we exploring any incentives like a dry versus wet season rate structure or anything like that that could encourage, incentivize storage?
So yes, we are. In the current fee schedule, there is one rate established by the council. And in talking with area users, a tiered rate structure may be beneficial in providing some of that off-season support. And so finding that appropriate fee and establishing it, I think, will be the key component.
Got you. And are we looking at any of that right now, or are we just sort of acknowledging that in concept it's a good carrot, or are we moving? I guess, where are we in that process, or any other process too, I guess, of encouraging storage?
So well, encouraging storage, we're actively looking for area basins that can take recycled water. This year we have water going out all winter long this year, whereas that's the first year we've had that done. And so finding and establishing relationships with those property owners that have those basins on a large scale has been essential. We've identified roughly 1,500 acre feet of basins that we're trying to facilitate filling. And that's a good amount of water for the city. And so as far as the rate, it's a good point, and we are looking at it, and part of the master plan process will help vet that out a little bit and get us a better cost of service so that we can get a better rate to compile it there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate the presentation.
Councilwoman Fisher, followed by Councilman McDonald.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. And I know that you don't have an update on the master plan, but do you have a year goal in mind when that purple line matches the blue line so that all our influent is now being recycled?
I have ambitions.
I want to hear about them.
That's a very complicated thing in that storage is really a very key component in making those two match. Our program is very different from other utilities that have recycled water programs. Our storage of tertiary treated water is around 1.5 million gallons. Other programs, other regional programs, have as much as 140 million gallons of tertiary treated water that they can send out kind of more on demand. We're very much treat, store for a very brief moment, and send out. And so we're very hand to mouth on our program. So establishing that parity will take a lot of planning and a lot of efforts to get our storage component, both on the public and the private side, outlined so that we can do that. But tentatively, it's probably achievable within 10 to 15 years.
Thank you.
Councilmember McDonald, followed by Councilmember Healy.
Thank you very much. You know, I'm just looking at the master plan update and happy that you're hitting it now. I know most programs originate from the need for sewage disposal, for recycle water to the creek, and that's what drives them. And it still does to essentially to our needs, because the weather flows are so high when all of our urban landscape uses are low or non-existent. So to transfer to that, I would really like the city to get all its urban recycled water opportunity to the front of the bus rather than the ag use. Now, they happen at different times of year. If you can fill an ag pond in winter or springtime, you know, after rain stop and the ponds start dropping, that's very positive for our disposal problem, but it doesn't really address our urban water supply problem. So I'd really like the master plan to focus on getting our urban outdoor use that doesn't need potable, doesn't need treated Russian River water, to be on our recycled water. And all these things cost money. I mean, recycled water must cost twice what we're paying for water supply from other sources. So it's still driven by the need to find a disposal solution, a land disposal solution. And the only way those curves ever meet is if we still have land disposal, still have ag. But I'd like to get us to the point where reducing our dependency on Sonoma County water is the primary goal of the master plan. I know a few things that haven't been mentioned in the slide, probably for brevity, but I'm not limited that way. Is HOA landscaping and residential apartment complexes, many of these other, there's just many more uses than we're already getting. Alas, they take a lot of pipe, and they come back to your point about storage. There's a storage pond problem, but if you go into the distribution system, you're going to need tanks. You're going to need land within the city to establish it. Otherwise, being served pressure on demand from Ellis Creek is impossible. It's just too high and low all at once. So I think we all ought to be aware that we're going to need in the city storage sites as well as out of city ag pond sites. So in this master plan is going to propose very costly solutions. But in order to do the right thing with this water, we're going to have to be aware of the impacts within town. I do love that the construction use is huge this year, and I hope that we don't take a step backwards and waive anything after our drought measures are reduced, because that's a great use of water there. The I guess the actual question I have is, you mentioned the reduced inflow. I'm wondering if any part of that in the last 2 or 3 years is due to lower toilet and shower use, or is the comment you made really mean that our indoor conservation efforts have kind of hit a maximum? You know, have you had a chance to consider? I realize that's more on our water conservation department to conjecture, but what's your conjecture?
So the answer to your question is yes. We have received reduced flows during the drought conservation measures. During this year's drought, we typically have around 4.2 million gallons a day of influent coming into the plant. We hit at times with the drought measures that are taking around 3.7 million gallons, and maybe even as low as 3.5 on the weekends at times. And so we are seeing that, but it's still, it's going to be a very limited percentage of the total inflows coming into the plant. But we did see and experience inflow reduction due to the drought measures this year. Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you. It's good to know there's still some more household conservation, indoor, not outdoor water, not landscaping, indoor, that we can still ask people to try and achieve, and that we haven't reached our maximum hardening of indoor use yet. And you mentioned this summertime use of 4 million flow through this summer. I'd like that to be our goal for urban recycled use, so that we had no flow there, and then we try and balance the rest of the year on the ag programs. Thank you very much. It's great presentation. Very exciting.
Thank you, Councilmember Healy, followed by Councilmember King.
Thank you. So I also want to congratulate staff on a great presentation. There's a lot of information here. It's a very important program for the city, and I agree with Councilmember McDonald's point that the top priority really should be potable water offset within the city limits for parks and playgrounds and irrigation and things like that. So I'm certainly willing to support, ag use where it doesn't interfere with that. But on the question of potable offset, I know with the Maria Drive repaving project that was completed over a year ago, there was a purple pipe installed as part of that, and I know that the plan to hook up the playgrounds and parks, school playgrounds and parks, was lagging behind that. Can you tell us if those have actually been hooked up to tertiary water at this point?
I don't have an update on those parks specifically. Maybe Gina or Christopher might have an update on the CIP work on those projects.
I can jump in, and thank you for the question. The parks, I believe that we have 4 of them that we are now poised to hook up. We have the purple pipe recently completed, and that was done obviously with a specialty contractor. The mains were done with a larger scale utility contractor, and so now we are going to bid with some smaller landscape contractors.
to actually do the facilities in the park because it's just smaller work. It's completely different scope. And that's, those parks are scheduled to come online this spring.
Thanks for that. And has the JC campus been converted over to tertiary yet?
I don't know for sure.
I believe the JC is a current user.
Okay, well,
Not to butt in here, Mike, but when they were getting scorned for having green lawns during the drought, I believe their response was that we're on the purple pipe. So,
okay. Thank you for that. And then, you know, while we pursue this, and I do support pursuing, especially expansion of the purple pipe system within the city limits to do potable offset. At the same time, the work we do needs to be cost effective from the ratepayer perspective when we're actually paying, spending ratepayer dollars. There was a bill in the legislature, I think 2 or 3 years ago, that by Senator Hertzberg out of Los Angeles that would have prohibited any discharge into our river or other rivers in the Bay Area and like things around the years, as opposed to the window that we've been operating under for decades at this point. And that bill failed. And I don't believe it's going to be reintroduced because he's termed out. Anyway, I just want to make the point that while I do support this work does need to be cost effective, because as we start reaching for less and less cost effective projects, which the west side is going to be a challenge there, we just need to be careful to keep that perspective in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember King, followed by Councilmember Barnacle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. You mentioned infrastructure upgrades. You know, that'll probably come forward in a broader master plan update, but do you have any sneak previews on what you have in mind for the updates? Anything currently in place that needs attention, or what kind of expansion are we looking at?
So we have tentatively both in town use, which includes going to the west side mapped out, as well as the Lakeville Highway corridor, which has been a long project that the city's looked at for recycled water distribution. So identifying that and through that master plan process, bringing those designs and plans to the council and getting that input and buy-in will be a key kind of component of moving forward these areas that are of priority.
Great, well, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Barnacle.
thank you. You made a comment about setting rates based on cost of service, and it made me wonder if there were existing regulations that sort of dictate the sort of the metes and bounds of what we can do with our tariffs.
I'm not aware, but we're checking on this to see if it's bound similar to wastewater and water rates, similar prices, processes with Prop 218. I don't believe, because it's a service that's a byproduct, it follows that same protocol. And so as we develop that and kind of identify that rate structure, any of those nuances will come out of that process, and we'll bring them to the council as part of it.
Right. That's a very interesting because it feels like it's potentially an enterprise fee or something that we have that doesn't come with the same strings attached that a lot of the other things we have do. So would certainly be interested in a future, maybe in a follow-up or something, email just sort of laying out what we understand to be the sort of regulatory constructs around that. And then the final piece, just around in-town storage. I thought Councilmember Fisher was going to mention this, but definitely with our general plan update and the Parks Master Plan update happening and things like that, even our airport plan, let's make sure that we identify where the purple pipe exists, and if there's opportunities to put in storage at at our existing parks or existing properties that are close to the purple pipe, but make sure that gets into our current planning efforts. Otherwise, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Barnacle. Councilmember Healy, followed by Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. So Councilmember Barnacle asked a very good question, and it kind of plays into item 3C on the consent calendar, because I had asked a question and we all got responses from Mr. Cochran earlier this afternoon about the payback period if we extend out Adobe Road, and the response there was it was going to be a very short payback period, 1 to 2 years. But if we don't have our arms around what we can charge for wastewater when we're selling it to folks, I don't understand the support for that answer. So staff could please clarify. Thank you.
So currently, we have a council adopted fee for recycled water. It is half the price of potable. That fee was established long before my time at the city, and the mechanics of how it got there, I'm not aware of yet. However, I will look into it and update the council on it.
No, it was just an arbitrary number. I was around when that happened. But if we're saying we don't have confidence in our ability to set a recycled water rate, then I don't see how staff can be telling us that we have a 1 to 2 year payback on this proposed expansion out at Adobe Road for the city MASH that's proposed. That's what I'm struggling with right now.
Understand.
I can jump in on this. One of the estimations that we made is that 300 to 400 acre feet of water is expected per year from the expansion. So if you multiply that times the revenue of $1,045, that's where we arrive at the payback of roughly, what was it, $300,000 to $400,000 once you get storage all up and running, Jason. That's what I recall from our calculations on that.
Right. Thanks.
The grant match was $325,000, so that's where it equates within roughly a 1 to 2 year period. So hope that helps.
Well, I mean, that assumes that we can continue charging the rates that we're charging.
That's correct.
And I think I just heard that we don't know that.
Well, we base our assumptions on known information, and right now the rate is $1,045 per acre feet.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDonald.
Yeah, I think that's a great conversation right there. I think certainly you have to have a Prop 218 hearing for any recycled water within the urban section, and cost of water is going to be calculated and blended to figure out what the real cost of the meter rate is for no matter who you're charging. And so we would fit into a 218 hearing on all that. It would allow input from legal that the contracts outside, the ag contracts, are wholly independent and probably can operate at whatever rate is negotiated. But I would also suggest that since the cost to produce the water is less than the cost we're recovering, there might not be any fee that contributes to the capital program. I mean, we're selling at a loss because it's a disposal project, and we're intending that. So to say payback is kind of a tricky territory to get into. But I would agree with Councilman Healy's point is we should maximize outside grant money and opportunities so that it's not our money first. If somebody and the state is willing to do these things, as Councilman Barnacle mentioned, this is a lot of opportunity for us to get our funding for these things from grant opportunities. So it's tricky whether the best thing is to charge full price to an urban user or some discounted, that they're apples and oranges. The disposal contracts have to get negotiated one way, short-term surplus user kind of agreements, and the urban ones that demand that somebody come off of off of potable water and demand that they come on recycled and pay full price. And I would see that as the future of succeeding in recycled water.
So Council, if I may briefly, in response to some of those issues, this is going to be a much more extended conversation when we get into policy choices and legal constraints and opportunities when we're seeking council direction about these matters that would follow from the master plan studies. It's a very complex area. It's kind of in between bodies of law. It's not clear to what extent recycled water really is subject to Prop 218. What we anticipated over the course of the history of the management of the recycled water distribution program that Jason just summarized, there's a lot of history there actually, was, and we've seen this become true, especially this last period during which we're still under a declared water shortage emergency, is recycled water moved from being effluent that it was challenging to dispose of to becoming a very valuable commodity that preserves a lot of important uses, including the public's very sizable investment in landscaping in the public spaces, industrial uses, ag uses, other uses. So that's as seems to happen fairly regularly, that the facts on the ground, the technology, and things like climate change have outpaced the law. So there's going to be some careful analysis that we need to do so that we can explore with the council what the options are there. And so there's not a lot of clear certainty right now about for such things as to what extent the program really is going to be governed by Prop 218 or other considerations in the Constitution and elsewhere. So we'll definitely be talking more about that and analyzing more with respect to that in the future. So thanks.
And I concur, and I'm glad to see the master plan on the agenda. But this presentation gives us a great opportunity for council to weigh in on its vision prior to getting too far down the path on the master plan and finding we have differing agenda. So I really appreciate the input tonight. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to our Public Works Department for this presentation. You can see it definitely garnered a lot of interest. So we appreciate it very much. And I'm going to go on to the rest of the agenda. And this is agenda changes and deletions to the current agenda only, and there are none. And at this time, I would like to point out that we have 23 people in attendance on the Zoom meeting tonight in the public. And with that, we're going to go on to general public comment. And I would like to ask the clerk if she has received any general public comments for tonight.
Madam Mayor, the city received 26 general public comments, which are posted online.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will ask our moderator if he will open general public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At this time, we're opening the discussion up for general public comment, and these are for items that are not on the City Council's current agenda, but are within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction. Depending on the number of hands that are raised, we'll divide the time equally, 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm going to share my screen now because people know what to do by raising their hands. I'm going to start a 30-second timer, at the end of which we will see how many hands are raised and set the timer to either 2 or 3 minutes. So with that, members of the public wishing to speak in general public comment, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you're participating by phone. Attendees will be muted when their time expires or when their comments have concluded, whichever comes first. Speakers are encouraged to be respectful. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. And if you're unable to speak during the time allotted, you may send your comments to the email address on the screen, cityclerk@cityofpetaluma.org. So the 30-second timer has expired. There's 11 hands raised, so we'll reset the timer to 2 minutes. And the last speaker will be Sonoma County Conservation Council. Our first speaker is Paul G., followed by Scott Springhorn. So Paul, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Listen, thank you very much. We're going to talk about broadband. That was an excellent presentation tonight by Dylan, although we're going to get into some of the assumptions that were not properly examined. You'll receive another significant public comment on broadband from me later this week. You have excellent resources in Petaluma to guide you to the best possible broadband policy. I'm going to point you to Wire America and Wire California. Each has a tagline that says broadband via fiber optics and only calls text via wireless, because that's the way the laws are today. On these websites, there's very full information documenting California's excellent citizen efforts to preserve local control for all California counties and cities regarding decisions about the placement, construction, and modification of wireless telecommunications facilities of any size or any G. Our efforts resulted in 2 vetoes of big telecom bills written by the American Legislative Exchange Council. The first veto by Governor Brown in 2017, which canceled California's bill SB 649, and the second by Governor Newsom in 2021, which wiped out SB 556. Work on defeating SB 556 took all the time, so we did not weigh in on this TAC items throughout 2021. But we listened to all the video, all 15 hours of it, and we will do so this week in public record, and we'll copy all members of the City Council Planning Commission and the Technology Advisory Committee. Both of these bills were unbelievably and wastefully sponsored by our own state Senator Bill Dodd. The City Council should write a letter to Senator Dodd informing him that in a government of the people, by the people, for the people have spoken and won twice. He should represent the people and not attempt to introduce this wasteful, hazardous, and damaging bill a third time. The presentation of broadband tonight was mostly excellent, but some of the assumptions were not sufficiently examined. You'll read in my comment, who paid for the fiber optic cables that are currently in Petaluma? The people of Petaluma. $5 to $7 per month since the mid-1990s. Why is the city of Petaluma involved in digging unnecessarily trenches? We can put it in existing conduit. And there's no need to explore broadband via cellular technologies because they've lost all the lawsuits and there is no preemption for wireless information services. That would be broadband.
Thank you for your comments, Paul. Our next speaker is Scott Springhorn, followed by John Hanania. Scott, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you very much. Make no mistake, carriers want to expand 5G in Petaluma, which will result in the exact opposite of what the city's climate goals are now and in the future. 5G means massive energy consumption by 2 or 3 times of what is used with 4G currently. Fiber optic uses far, far less energy and is safer and cheaper. 5G is not sustainable. Each new antenna by each carrier on every pole every 200 feet means more electricity, loading, and draw. Further, once 5G is installed, carriers are legally able to come back and replace, update, and upload the equipment and EMF radiation without requiring city approval, just like what is happening right now with the Casa Grande cell tower project. 5G is a fire risk, a liability risk, and a climate risk to Petaluma. Fiber to the home, not to the carrier's cell tower, is far superior. It's safer, faster, cheaper, and not an electricity hog. Do not allow carriers and 5G to defeat our climate goals. It's not about what the providers want, it's what our city wants. Fiber to our own homes, not to carrier cell towers, is the right solution and the best solution for Petaluma. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Scott. Our next speaker is John Hanania, followed by Taryn Obaid. John, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Good evening. On the horses, they use shutters or blinders so the horse could see in front of them. I'm just wondering, what is it that's going to take for our elected official to see what's taking place in the front of them? Some time ago, I spoke with Dennis Posake about the lack of maintenance on the streets, and he informed me that they're doing a wonderful job. He received the list for all the streets that's been done, and they set $2 million aside. So, and then Teresa Barrett, when somebody like myself bring out what they see, she label it as they have an axe to grind. So the people who just did the survey in the road, what kind of axe they have to grind with the city of Petaluma? Because the city of Petaluma, the streets came out the worse than last year. So you can fool some of the people some of the time, and you can fool all the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. You guys keep saying that your city manager is doing her job. I think the best thing to do is to fire your city manager who is not doing her job. That's one. Two, to initiate recall on Measure U because you guys are not using the fund to fix the streets. Because if in fact you're fixing the streets, who's these people are doing the survey telling you that the city of Petaluma have the worst in the Bay Area? But you guys can't see that. Why? Because you guys are such a smart people. You guys depend on your staff who tell you false reports. But who am I to say? What I see, in fact, I'm having a surgery in my eye because my eye keep lying to me. What I see, it's not true. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Taryn Obaid, followed by Rakusin. Taryn, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Hi, thanks, Patrick. Broadband expansion is great, but it is a complex and nuanced undertaking with big potential impacts. As such, it merits community discussion to ensure our social equity and climate goals are achieved. Public workshops so we get clear on the cost-benefit trade-offs of fiber optic versus 5G broadband. I noticed staff commented in the December 8 TAC meeting that they will ask the City Council this summer to revisit our small cell ordinance. That troubles me because we must have a clear understanding of 5G's carbon footprint versus fiber optics that takes into account raw materials of all that equipment that goes up on every pole, the manufacturing emissions of manufacturing all of that antenna equipment, and 5G's massive electricity use versus fiber optic. We also need to consider a social equity, the impact to our disabled. EMF sensitivity is an ADA recognized disability. Fire and liability impacts of antennas, which are known for overloading and causing fires. Privacy, because 5G delivers carriers thousands of times more of our data than Facebook. And for them, they are going to monetize it. I know. I work in the industry and I have many friends that work at Facebook. Fiber is much less costly, but we need to do it, and it's much more costly in terms of climate and cost to the consumer pre and post market. But we need fiber to the home. We do not want fiber as a giveaway to carriers, connecting them to their cell towers. I repeat, fiber to the home, not fiber to cell towers is what we want. These nuances and many more are why broadband merits robust public discussion and workshops more than the usage survey. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Taryn. Our next speaker is Rakusin, followed by Larry Ortega. Rakusin, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Terrific, thank you. And I just want to echo some of the sentiments by Paul G. and by Taryn and others. And I wrote a letter in about the proliferation of 5G. And I know Dylan in his presentation did mention the employing of cellular technology in last mile services. And again, I just want to say that I think you have to explore fiber to the home as the much more viable alternative, really in any cost benefit analysis. And personally, a lot of my research is centered around potential for human harms, but also environmental harms. I think one of the big things with 5G is we don't know how it affects insect and animal life, as well as all the very, very real concerns about human health. And with those questions still outstanding, I think we can't push in a city plan or any kind of plan when it comes to broadband for implementation of 5G technology until these questions are answered. And this is something I'm finding as a recurring theme as we're talking about this telecom and broadband initiative. And I think the city actually has a role to push some of these companies, if they are going to try to push 5G technology on us, to push them to do the research, design the experiments, to really get some data and analyses. Because I've read through a lot of the experiments, and consistently industry groups and companies have said that it's too hard to design effective experiments. What kind of outcomes are we looking for? How do we measure wide-scale human health and environmental impacts? And I think cities like Petaluma, affluent kind of Bay Area cities, have the power to push these companies to answer these questions, not implement their technology, but rather have them answer to why we should even consider this technology when things like 4G are not prohibitive in terms of connectivity. We talk about equity and making sure people have access to these utilities. The existing services are in no way, I think, a hindrance. 5G doesn't offer a lot in that equation. So just adding one to the many voices opposing 5G. If we're going to invest in any kind of broadband expansion, it should be fiber cable to the home.
Thank you for your comments for Houston. Our next speaker is Larry Ortega, followed by Theodora Scarrato. Larry, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Hi, my name is Larry Ortega. I'm president of Community Union. I was invited by one of your community members who I've worked with on statewide issues regarding affordable and safe broadband. Since 1994, I've led collaborations between city, schools, and nonprofit organizations and corporate America, providing training to our digital divide communities throughout the state of California. We've graduated over 35,000 people and touched over 30 million consumers via the news coverage that we've garnered in our work. Fiber to the home is true world-class telecommunication infrastructure. But many times, particularly those that are living in our disadvantaged communities, simply don't know what they don't know. So prior to delivering the survey into the community, it's imperative to have several community technology education forums in language as needed. It is necessary to talk about the history and the role that the providers have played to date, and how the city council intends to balance the AT&T, Comcast, Sonic's fiduciary duty to their shareholders of maximizing profit against the interests of the residents of Petaluma on safety and affordability. Chattanooga is a great model, and there are many, many others springing up across the state and country, where more and more cities are realizing the advantage of turning broadband service from a cost center into a profit center to the extreme benefit of its residents. The city's timing is good on this issue, as there are unprecedented fiscal resources being made available from both state and federal entities to close the digital divide. One-time funding that we will never, ever again see in our lifetimes, particularly to the city's last mile requisites. The CPUC's CASF or CASF is a great funding source that should be looked at closely. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Larry. Our next speaker is Theodora Scarrato, followed by Catherine Dodd. Theodora, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you. I'm Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust. And this year, we won a major lawsuit confirming that FCC safety limits are not based on an up-to-date, robust review of the science. Health agencies such as the National Cancer Institute, EPA, CDC, they are not monitoring and reviewing the latest science as we might assume. Compliance with FCC's cell tower radiation limits cannot be understood as being based on a full review of the latest research. And that is why relying on these 25-year-old safety limits when installing wireless infrastructure opens up serious liability issues. It's market standard for insurance companies to exclude health damages from wireless radiation in their policies, because wireless radiation is defined by wireless companies themselves as a type of pollution. According to page 10 of the Verizon Total Mobile Protection Plan, for example, they state they do not cover all artificially produced non-ionizing radiation. It's a pollution along with smoke and chemicals. And for years, insurance reports have rated the wireless radiation as high risk, like asbestos, and a recent Swiss Re white paper classified 5G as high off-the-leash risk. Now, mobile operators in the US have been unable to get insurance to cover their liabilities related to damages from long-term exposure to radio frequency radiation for years. And wireless companies warn their shareholders in their 10Ks of financial risk from the wireless emissions from their antennas, but they don't warn consumers or communities. Just last month, the California mother wrote the FCC asking if a cell tower built in front of her home was safe, and the FCC lawyer told her, go to the FDA. The FDA wrote her and said, the FDA does not regulate cell towers or cell tower radiation. Therefore, FDA has no studies or information on cell towers in response to your questions, promoting affordable wired broadband.
Sorry, Theodora, I had to cut you off. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Catherine Dodd, followed by Bev at Protect Wild Petaluma. Catherine, you may unmute and begin your comments. Catherine, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Catherine Dodd. I'm a registered nurse and an environmental health expert, especially in the area of EMFs. Thank you, Mayor Barrett and members of the council for hearing this tonight. I was going to talk just about the health effects, but I will send you more information on that. I'd like to respond briefly to the survey, to the deck, and point out that if you do the survey, which is a great idea, I'd suggest you do it in Spanish and English, and that it not just be online, that it really reach the community. Definitions will be very important because most people don't even know what 5G is or what broadband is. So I'm all for the survey, but with good definitions and bilingually. Fiber, as it was discussed, is the trunk of the last mile. The branches go to the home, and you can't include all 3 carriers or even new carriers to the home the way you're proposing, unless you have a regional system, as Mayor Barrett suggested, which is a municipal public network. Regarding expenses, there's last mile money for this in the current infrastructure bill and in the Build Back Better bill, which hopefully will pass. We have to move quickly to work with the county and other cities to get that done. I'd like to say I want to discourage subsidies, which are identified as a way to bridge the digital divide for low-income communities. Subsidies merely line the pockets of the unregulated corporate carriers. Please actively pursue municipal solutions. These corporate carriers have had 2 decades to bridge the digital divide, and they have not helped low-income communities because they don't make a profit in them. You've received excellent written testimony on health effects, particularly from Dr. Cindy Russell from Physicians for Radiation Safety. And I'd like to draw your attention to those. And there are lots and lots of resources on municipal broadband. I hope you.
Thank you for your comments, Catherine. Sorry to cut you off there. Our next speaker is Bev of Protect Wild Petaluma, followed by M. Sullivan. Bev, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Okay, thank you for listening. I'm surprised that 5G has raised its head again when I was so proud in the past for the city limiting the installation of 5G severely. So this doesn't make sense to me that that Dracula is being exhumed. I agree with pretty much all the previous comments, which are extremely well put and well researched. I know that the question of the airlines and 5G seems to have faded, but it's just a way of seeing how there are all these possible unknown effects. And so maybe it won't affect the airlines, but what else might be out there? The other thing is, I wanted to say that installing broadband as a municipal network, I think, is a great idea. I would love it to be fiber optic. You know, we can do this, and as people said, there's money available. Lastly, what I want to say is, do what the citizens say have any more weight than what the staff says? So if the staff says we do A and 100 people turn up and say, no, let's do B, does that mean we're going to do A anyway? So I leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Our next speaker is M. Sullivan. You may unmute and begin your comments.
Good evening, all. I'm speaking up to oppose a change to Petaluma's small cell ordinance that would allow for 5G to come on board. This is a decision that requires a great deal of thought and potentially carries a great deal of risk. Many other cities and countries are proceeding with great caution and raising legitimate alarms about the higher frequency millimeter wave radiation 5G will employ, in concert with the microwaves that have been in use and will continue to be for the older cellular technologies such as 4G. 5G won't replace 4G, but it will accompany it for a long time. 5G also employs new technologies, active antennas capable of beamforming, phased arrays, and massive multiple inputs and outputs known as MIMO. MIMO will require dramatically increasing the number of antenna ports at each base station. Where 5G is a new technology and there's currently no research on the potential effects of this latest technology, it makes sense from a liability and prudence standpoint not to approve this in advance of our having a better understanding of any potential adverse health effects. We know 5G networks operate on higher frequency RF wavelengths than older generation networks. They use frequencies from 30 to 300 gigahertz, which are 10 to 100 times higher than the radio waves used today in 4G Wi-Fi networks. They are easily absorbed by buildings and will require many closely spaced base stations, one every 200 feet. Very little is known about the effects of exposure to any of these technologies because governments have been remiss in funding this research. We do know that short-term exposure to millimeter waves can damage tissues and adversely affect the nervous, immune, and cardiovascular systems. And research suggests that long-term exposure may pose health risks to skin, eyes, and testes. And I included a number of peer-reviewed scientific study links with my letter that I submitted to the city because I'm going to run out of time. So just simply, I'm in favor of fiber optic over broadband. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And that is the last hand raised. So I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll close public comment, general public comment, and we will go to council comment. So I will start with Council Member McDonald.
Thank you very much. It's been actually a very busy period here. The highlight the Fairgrounds ad hoc from your city council and the fair boards together held the first meeting in 2 years. Over 250 people were on that Zoom call, which is an impressive demonstration of public interest. And the public expected to comment on changes at the fairgrounds, before the fairgrounds. The meeting was about how to get all voices in the city of Petaluma engaged in the process through a very exciting new proposal and something the city has never done in its public outreach efforts before. So I'm anxious to see next steps on that. The Planning Commission reviewed a townhome development in called Riverscape at Riverfront near the new Marriott Hotel, and the item was continued to February. In addition, there's a concern about a gun store signage ordinance and lack thereof in Petaluma, and Planning Commission would like this to be a priority. And when we get to council priorities, we'll have to figure out how all priorities from all parties get weighed in. And then at the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, also very exciting, the committee directed staff to proceed with their with public contact for the 5th Street Bike Boulevard. And hopefully this is one of the first of many helping Petalumans get on their bikes safely and get around town. The PBAC also reviewed Bassett Street traffic calming devices, which would be one of the first in the middle of an intersection calming devices. So we'll see how that works and how quickly any physical improvements for safety can get made. A big notice this week, there'll be a public meeting for the North McDowell Complete Streets projects. That's the paving, big paving project in North McDowell, but also complete streets means sidewalks, bike lanes, and safety improvements. So that's Wednesday the 26th, 6 p.m. on Zoom. Hope everyone tunes in to see what's being proposed. I attended the Senior Advisory Committee, and that was an engaging group that helps the one more voice be heard in the city. And a big shout out to Petaluma People Services who made the presentation at that, highlighting the one particular thing. Petaluma is one of only 8 communities in the entire United States that deliver hot meals to people in need 365 days a year. And so, I mean, that's just phenomenal and makes me, Petaluma, proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy.
Thank you. So the only thing I was going to report on was the fair ad hoc, and as Mr. McDonald already did that, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnacle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have had a Parks and Recreation meeting. It was fairly uneventful with the exception of a fairly thorough update on our capital improvement projects that pertain to parks. A lot of good, exciting stuff moving forward on that, and just a lot of energy on the Parks Commission right now. Outside of my my appointments, I had my first school Petaluma training this weekend, and I'm hoping that when staff gives their comments, I've been asking for an update on a game camera at the Paula Lane Preserve to see if the badgers returned, because the biologist mentioned that the badger was going to be gone, but that it would be back, I think, starting in November. And I just haven't had any updates on that, and I want to make sure that the animals return to the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also attended the Fairgrounds Subcommittee meeting, and I won't get into much more detail than Councilmember McDonald did, but I expect that the healthy democracy concept will be coming back to the council at some point so that we can all weigh in and give our views about that approach going forward. The only thing I would say, in addition, Council Member McDonald mentioned 250 attendees. By my count, there were over 300, although some of those were us, but us, it consisted of about a dozen people. So it was really, as one might imagine, a well-attended meeting, and I'm sure the follow-up to it will also be comparably well-attended. The Transit Advisory Committee, the other TAC, did not meet this past month, but two of the items from the December meeting are on our consent calendar and were unanimously approved. So we'll see what goes with that when that comes around. Sonoma Clean Power Board met earlier this month. With the legislature and regulatory agencies kind of having a quiet December, we had a relatively brief meeting, although one item that you can take a look at, it's very brief, very well done, is the Sonoma Clean Power Annual Report, which is on their website. Gives you some insights about what happened this year with the authority. And then lastly, or next to lastly, I attended the Youth Commission for the initial meeting of 2022. Had a very good meeting, and one of the things that came up was some comments about affecting certain policies in the city related to bike lanes and safe. They basically, one of the members was talking about what essentially is safe paths to schools. But that led to a further discussion, and they expressed, when I suggested to them that we were going through a general plan revision and that they might want to get their ideas on that forward, the idea of a presentation from the Youth Commission at some point in the coming months to the General Plan Advisory Committee was broached, and I think that they're going to be interested in doing that because some of them do have some good ideas, and I think it would be very interesting for the very younger segment of our city government to have some weigh in on the plan that they're going to live under until they're middle-aged. So that will be forthcoming. And lastly, along with Councilmember Posick and Mayor Barrett, and both made comment on this, we attended the 100th birthday celebration of a World War II vet here in Petaluma, Mel Silva, over at his house, and it was pretty incredible. Went on for about an hour, probably more than an hour, and they had a parade, which included both our public safety departments as well as others from around the county, motorcycles. It was pretty festive, and I'll leave it at that because I know the other two may want to comment, but it was really, it was great to see, very enjoyable. and a great community event. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Kosake.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that was a fun birthday parade for Mel. I think, I would say I attended that both to honor Mel and to honor my dad, who was also a World War II vet. One of my new assignments is the Airport Commission, where they're taking a longer than they initially thought look at their minimum standards requirements. The biggest point of contention has to do with requirements for mechanics working at the airport, whereas there is one on-site mechanic who's required to have a large space and insurance and certifications, and sometimes there's calls for individual airplane owners to bring in their own mechanics without insurance and without having to have a workspace. Anyway, that's an ongoing discussion. Secondly, another new appointment is a Continuum of Care Board. The board did not meet yet, meets this week, but we had a general membership meeting with an interesting discussion of a new county program through Sonoma County Human Services and the JobLink program, where they have taken referrals of homeless folks who were deemed to be employment ready from around the county. And in the first 7 months, they had 49 referrals and were able to place 9 of those 49 referrals into jobs at this time. So I think that's another direction worth looking at a little more. And perhaps while we're on that, just to mention that there have been some delays with our tiny home village, but that the latest is that we should have 4 homes. Is it 4 or is it 8? Anyway, up by February 7th.
So thank you. Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. 3 things to report on. Today, the Future of Transit Ad Hoc Committee of the Sonoma County Transportation Authority met. And the most exciting thing there was learn that the SCTA, the acronym for Sonoma, they're going after a grant with a combination of the 3 transit agencies, Santa Rosa, the county, and Petaluma, to electrify our bus fleet. And also they're putting Corona Station in that proposal as well. So that's due in March, and we'll know in June about it's a $20 million funding request. And Climate Commission did meet and look at primarily the GHG emissions, the existing report and existing conditions, and talked about what that might look like in the climate action and adaptation plan. And then last, we did have the cool Petaluma kickoff week before last. It feels like it was just yesterday. Incredibly successful, great community support, and yeah, incredibly inspiring. And again, as Councilmember Barnacle mentioned, we did train our first series of cohorts for January. And so we'll have 50 cool blocks underway next week. That's all.
Thank you very much. And it's interesting that it feels like yesterday to you, because it feels like about a month ago to me. But it was a wonderful event. And like so many of the events that we are forced to be having on Zoom, people are showing up. People really are interested in taking part in our city and our community and having their voices heard. So from the Fairgrounds to the Cool Challenge, everything, we're seeing people who want to be involved. So that is really wonderful. It continues to be that. And during the last time since we've had a meeting, which was the very beginning of this month, I've had Bay Area Air Quality Management District meeting in their annual retreat, which is always almost a day-long event that sort of looks at where we've been and where we're going. And the work there, as you can imagine, is also continues to be important and influence all of us. So that goes on. And the Bay Area Regional Collaborative is also a meeting that I attended, which tries to keep all the areas in the 9 Bay Area counties aware of what is going on in all the different regions. I want to just piggyback on what Councilmember King said about the celebration for Mel Silva. As they used to say at the Argus, you're an old timer if you can remember when Silva's Appliances was on the boulevard. And that is currently the part of the boulevard where we are seeing, I believe it's called the North River Apartments being built right now. And it was just really wonderful to be able to see someone be able to celebrate 100 years of life during this time, since so many of us have not been able to get together. And it was done safely and outside. And as Councilmember King mentioned, there was quite a display of not only people celebrating him from the different safety groups around the county and our city, but also I guess Mel must be a big automobile lover as well, because there were a lot of old time cars that came by and motorcycles. So it was really quite a nice celebration for him and his family. So with that, I will go to our city council, our city manager, and have her report.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council and community. As a follow-up to your subcommittee's report out on the fairgrounds, we heard from a lot of community members, and we're going to be circling back with both subcommittees to get further feedback on some of the themes that we heard from the community, and we'll be compiling that into a staff report for council at the end of February. And this Wednesday, I want to encourage our community to attend a meeting Wednesday, 6 p.m. on North McDowell Street on the reconstruction project. And there is a Zoom link on cityofpetaluma.org/McDowell. And to follow up with Councilmember Barnacle's question regarding the camera, we submitted a monitoring plan to the district and are awaiting approval, and our biologist is ready to go. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we're going to move on to the consent calendar. We have consent items A through J, and I believe Councilmember Barnacle wants to pull item 3D. Does anybody else want to pull anything? I see Councilmember King's hand is up.
Well, I have two comments. One is I think we skipped the approval of minutes and approval of proposed agendas.
You're absolutely right.
And but when we do get to consent calendar, I just have a comment on 3J. So I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that quick catch. So we will go to first to the approval of the minutes for the January 3rd meeting. And do I see any corrections or questions? No, I don't. So the minutes will be approved as submitted. And now we will go to the approval of proposed agenda, and those are the agendas for the regular meeting of Monday, January 31st and February 7th. The January 31st meeting is our workshop on district elections. So Councilmember King, would you like to make a motion?
I will. Thank you. I'll move the item.
Okay, and Councilmember Fisher?
No, I'll second the item.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call vote?
Mayor Barrett,
Yes.
Councilmember Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
and Pasquet.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. And with that, now we are at the consent calendar. So without repeating myself, I will ask Councilmember Barnacle if he still wishes. Are you pulling item 3D? Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And Councilmember King, you said you had comments on the consent calendar.
Yeah, just one comment on item J, 3J. It's the resolution opposing net energy metering 3.0. I haven't gotten a notice of this, but I did read that the California Public Utilities Commission has pulled the item on the 27th. I still think we should send the letter and would hopefully get a unanimous vote on that. It's something I sent in and requested be put on the agenda, and maybe others did as well. But it looks like there's a delay. I'm not sure what that means. My observation over the time I've been on Sonoma Clean Power, our PUC is a little tough to read, but I still think the letter makes sense. So that was my comment.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, I certainly support the letter as well. A little bit of color on that is I think that they've lost, there was one commissioner who couldn't be there, and they've also lost a couple of commissioners recently. And surprise, surprise, people are itching to see that as a stepping stone to somewhere else. But that's how I understand it. And I certainly think that we need to send a letter. So.
Okay, thank you. So right now we will open up public. I will ask our interim city clerk if she's received any items on the consent calendar items.
Madam Mayor, we received one, which is posted online.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will go to public comment. And I will ask our moderator to see if there's anybody in the Zoom audience who would like to speak on this item, any item on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public, I see hands being raised, so I'll share my screen. If you'd like to comment on the consent calendar, please raise your hand and you'll be called on in turn. You'll have 3 minutes in which to give your comments. And our first speaker is Ben Peters, followed by Paul G. So Ben, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Yes, real briefly, the Measure U committee did meet last Tuesday. There was a robust discussion. I'd like to see the related consent calendar item and the results of this action be reflected in the budget forecast and invite all members of the public to attend. That meeting will be on March 17th. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Our next speaker is Paul G, followed by Taryn Obaid. Paul, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Yes, thank you for the time. I do want to comment on 2 items. The first one is about this teleconference meeting stuff. So what we have to do, as I put into the public comment, we actually have to have real information that can be verified and cross-examined in order to take any kind of draconian effort, such as shutting down our government and not allowing it to be open for the hours that are supposed to be staffed by the M Group every Tuesday and Thursday. Now, I have reached out on Tuesdays and Thursdays requesting telephone calls back. I get no response from the M Group. And so I'm not getting the service that they are contractually obligated to do. And so the point here is that we actually have to make sure that we're not just following a story. We actually have to understand, is this evidence real or not? And does it withstand any kind of cross-examination by an attorney? And can we actually reach and do some kind of deliberation to ensure that we're making decisions based on real information? I think our city government many times just goes along with whatever's told to them. And they don't do this kind of critical analysis. You can't shut down our government. We actually have a right to.
I'm sorry, Paul, I'm going to interrupt you there. Your comment is not related to the teleconference. So if you can please return to the subject at hand, that'd be appreciated.
My comments are relevant, and please don't do that again, Patrick, okay? So what I want to do here is also now talk about something I put in the public record that we're trying to get answers from, and we asked for those answers from last Thursday, yet we have no response from the city on these things. And there are basic questions, just why is the city of Petaluma staff proposing changes?
I'm sorry, Paul, you're not on topic. We're going to move to the next speaker, which is Taryn Obaid. Taryn, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Hi again. I wanted to comment on the bus shelters and benches. In the staff report, I didn't see any visual of what we're getting. So my comment is basically two things. Number one, I hope that the design of the shelters is such that it takes into account the orientation of the plot of land that the shelter is going on and which way the wind blows and how the sun travels through the sky, or I should say the earth travels through the galaxy relative to the sun. And what I mean by that is the bus shelters that are behind the grocery outlet store all slope upward. As they face the west, they slope upward. So when the rain comes in from the west, typically, it goes right into the shelter. And when the sun beats down in the summer, the shade is not, the angle of the roof is not providing shade. It's letting maximum sun in the shelter in the summer. So I am hopeful that there is a sense of, we provided the vendor with the orientation of the lots or the parcels that these shelters are going on, and that there will be maximum shelter from all elements as maximally as possible for all seasons of the year. My second comment is a lot of communities save $50,000, right? $50,000 is a lot of money. Maybe it's not a lot of money to the city. I guess it's maybe not, but it's a lot of money to most people, right? And what they do, other cities, many other cities, save this kind of money by having like the Lions Club, the Elks Club, artists design and construct benches. Different organizations donate benches, and they're not just generic benches. They're actually like works of art or handcrafted things that add interest, reinforce our brand. Potentially they could for Petaluma, but there's something special. They're not just anything. And so I would love for our city to keep trying to push our thinking outside the box and seize every opportunity to save money, one of my favorite things, and to be innovative and make our world beautiful, another one of my favorite things. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments, Taryn. And that is our last hand raised. So I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And with that, we'll close public comment on the consent calendar. And I see Council Member Bartlett has his hand up. Okay, you do have your hand up. Okay, Council Member McDonald.
I'd like to move the consent calendar excluding D.
Thank you very much for the motion. Council Member King.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for items A, B, C, E, F, G, H, I, and J. So can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Barrett,
Yes.
Council Members Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McConnell,
Yes.
and Pussycat.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. And now we will go to Council Member Barnacle and item 3D.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett. So I'm requesting that I requested we pull this because the project cost is double the engineering estimate. And when I go, like I've been by there now, and to be quite frank, I think that this traffic circulation that is going on there right now is actually better than it was. It was not a good street for biking on to begin with. It wasn't a great street for walking on, and there was no stop sign there. So actually having the the temporary measure that's there right now actually slows down the traffic for all the people that live in those apartments. And knowing that we're trying to scrape pennies together right now so that we can get complete streets on North McDowell and, you know, all the other projects that we have, you know, I'm just wondering if this could become something that's, you know, maybe we fix it so that it's safe for people to stand on, but not for cars to go over. It has an absolutely stunning view down the channel towards the David Yearsley building. And it, you know, it's right next to the sculpture studio right there. And when I think about how to spend $2 million to improve safety or circulation, like I wonder if this could be something where, you know, and I think we're going to be faced with, you know, when you have $100 million of backlog maintenance, you know, it's not just about, you know, we've got to be choosy about where we put it. And that might mean decommissioning certain streets or certain parts of streets. And this felt like one potential for, you know, basically putting a certain part of the street out of commission and maybe saving ourselves, I don't know, $1.5 million so that we could put it towards complete streets on North McDowell or something else, Caulfield Bridge, what have you. But I'm just wondering if there was any assessment done to actually look at making it safe for pedestrians, but not vehicles.
I can jump in. We've had some discussions internally, and I'll defer to Ken to address some of these comments. Ken, do you want to help us with some background on this?
I can, Christopher. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Barnacle, and council members. The First and F Street Bridge was closed December 21st because of noticeable accelerated deterioration and serious safety concerns. The bridge has failed structural members and presents a public safety concern. The bridge was identified for replacement 9 years ago, and it's in the approved current CIP. Also, the Petaluma Community Specific Plan identifies trolley service on the First Street rail lines crossing the bridge. Therefore, the design incorporated trolley loading. This aspect requires additional piles. I estimated that there's probably an increase in cost of 10 to 15% because of that for trolley loading. I should mention that the permits required are from the U.S. Army Corps, Water Board, and Fish and Wildlife Department. And these permitting agencies were all very much in favor of removing the existing failed wood members treated with hazardous materials that would otherwise get deposited into the river. The removal of these members would mitigate their impact on future dredging activities and help improve the environmental health of the river. I should mention here also that truck traffic for Rivertown Feed and Alex Ice Cream, as well as other business, has been rerouted to adjacent streets. Although the current detour is working, it is only intended to be a temporary condition, and the alternative was full closure of the street and intersection. Some traffic has not adhered to the posted signage when I've been out there, and it goes the wrong way through the detour area. Thus, I do have concern in the long term for traffic safety and operations. So thank you.
So I appreciate the traffic safety. I mean, some signage would help direct people on which way to go on some of those things. And I think they can be mitigated. My specific question is, when we were looking at alternatives, I see that there was, you know, the two different, you know, the two different types of construction. Was it torque and pylon? Something like that. And my question is, obviously those were, you know, looked at for constructing it for vehicles. And did we actually look at constructing it not for vehicles and closing down this part to vehicles and making it for pedestrians.
I followed what I was given in the, council approved CIP. So,
I understand that. It's not, I'm not trying to play got you. I just wanted to know if it was even assessed, because I hear things like we don't have the money for North McDowell. And I just, when I think about, like, I like the way that the street looks right now. And like, if I had a couple of park benches out there, I know that I could get people to come out and hang out with me on that section. And so when I think about where we're trying to go with our climate emergency and dictating more, really encouraging pedestrian activity, it just feels like one of those out of box opportunities. And I know we're at the 11th hour and we did this in our SIP and whatnot. And it feels, it's not nice of me to pull this and say, should we even be doing it when we're already, through the bid process, but we're about to spend double what we thought we were going to spend the last time we approved this project. And I just feel like it's worth a conversation of, is this the way we should be spending an extra $1 million, or should we be rethinking the project in its entirety to be more aligned with our climate goals and what else?
It's a very good discussion to have. I'll just jump in and say, I'll ask Gina to address the central specific plan and some of the elements there, but also traffic calming could be considered even after the bridge is constructed. We could do an all-way stop or other measures to help slow traffic in that area as well. Gina, do you want to comment on that, the central specific plan?
I just can mention the Petaluma community specific central plan, and it was just a misnomer. So I just wanted to be clear. It's a central Petaluma specific plan that references the historic trolley, and our consideration for that is consistent with our guiding planning documents. And I just also would like to throw in that while in concept, Council Member Barnacle, your ideas, are not unreasonable. I think that to try and pursue a change like that would take some significant outreach in that neighborhood, in that community. So I think you're going to hear, I think we're going to get an earful from different sides of that argument. But we would definitely want to hear from them, because it would be a very impactful change.
So in summary, we'll follow council's direction, but staff has been given direction, from what I understand, in the past to explore replacement of this bridge and to implement that. So that's what we're presenting this evening. It's always council's prerogative to make changes and give us direction, but heretofore we've provided the information necessary to make this project happen as originally envisioned.
Okay, thank you. Can Gina, you still have your hand up? Did you have something more to say on this item? No. Okay. Council Member Barnacle, did you want to say something more, or do you want to hear from the other council?
I'll hear from the other council members. That's fine.
Okay. So now I'll just go to Council Member Healy, followed by Council Member Fisher.
Thank you. So would one option tonight be to approve this, but give direction to staff to value engineer it to take out the 10 to 15% of extra costs that were included to make the trolley, make it safe for a trolley? I mean, I think the trolley is, with all due respect to its advocates, is increasingly unlikely as time goes by. We've paved over segments of the tracks that would be necessary for it already at D Street and at Washington. And I guess the question is, could we approve this and then give staff direction to use change orders to get the cost down by the 10 or 15%? Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Healy. Council Member Fisher, followed by Vice Mayor Posake.
Well, I just want to say that I did meet Councilmember Barnacle down there today, and it is a perfect place for a pocket park. It is a gorgeous view. It's a very, short segment of street. So in fact, the people that would be impacted, they're not that many. You know, and it dead ends, right, just a block away. And in fact, the trolley, one of the rails has been paved over to the south of the section we're talking about, the bridge. So there's no reason why, if we did have a trolley, it couldn't stop just short of the bridge if we decide to go ahead and replace it. And I think it's really, you know, I understand it's been in our CIP for years, and I'm really hopeful that we start re-looking at our CIP, because there's so much that has changed over the last 2 years that we really need to be changing with it. You know, again, if we're going to meet our goals, you know, reimagine how we live and work and play and move around. You know, I'm with Councilmember Barnacle. It's time to decommission some of our streets, you know, where we can. And this might be an opportunity to do that. And so I think it's worth exploring. And I think it's also worth exploring that when we're looking to the south of the bridge to where the road ends, it's a very wide roadway. And we could in fact and there's no sidewalk on the riverside of it. And, you know, we could in fact just restripe that street, I believe, and put in, you know, an area to walk. And in part of the staff report, it calls for a Shero for a class 3 bike. And I can tell you as a cyclist, that is the worst street in the city to cycle on, because of the cobblestones, because of the rail, because of the parking. It's incredibly unsafe. So we should absolutely not encourage cyclists to be on that roadway. And in fact, it's 2nd Street that's envisioned as a bike boulevard. So I think with all that, those are my comments for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Posake, I'm going to ask if you would mind. I see our city manager has her hand up. So
Sure.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Mayor, you know, I do believe that this is the time, and we are as staff looking through the entire CIP and challenging all the different projects right now, looking through that lens of climate first. But with that said, a project that has come forth that is, you know, going to make, you know, fortify that bridge and make sure that, you know, we do have vehicles going there, truck and freight gets delivered. So right now it's being detoured through neighborhoods. It would take a lot longer conversation and outreach, and I want us to do it right. I would hate to just shelve this, and then every project that we have coming forward, we need to continue having another conversation. I'd much rather come back with a CIP that we can say we looked at it through this climate lens, and this is what we'd like to recommend, and do a broader outreach. But I'm feeling a little pressed for time, just from the standpoint of the road is partially closed. It's creating kind of a traffic nightmare, and I hate to just decommission it without having like extensive community outreach and figuring out a well thought out, no longer a detour plan, but a new route. And I don't know what that looks like. So that would be my comment.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Posake, followed by Councilmember McDonald.
Yeah, well, I won't drag this out. I really appreciate Councilmember Barnacle's suggestion. I think this is as good a place as any to start with some of the changes we have to make, and I'd like to see us consider it, at least bring it back or something. I'm in full agreement with him and with Councilmember Fisher. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDonald.
Well, first, I have to disagree with Councilwoman Fisher. This is not the worst street. There's a tie. There's many. This is awful, but there's a tie. We have to fix many streets. Then with Councilman Barnacle, boy, I'm in a disagreeable mood. I'm going to disagree that we don't have money to do North McDowell correctly. We have to find the money to do North McDowell correctly. But I agree with him that we shouldn't spend any money that isn't wisely spent and the best outcome for this individual thing. I think this needs to be weighed on its own merit and determine whether $2 million for this intersection is the right amount of money and has the right value. I am concerned that it's all local money. That really, I mean, local money is where the action is, and I would have liked to see the state bridge funds here or other parlaying this so it wasn't strictly all city funds, because their city funds are so valuable, the seed money for all our projects. And then I'd like to hear a proposal for how this would proceed, because though I'm kind of interested in it, I can't see walking away unless I can see the path that the alternative proposal shows us in terms of connection with the public. I mean, if it currently is part of our infrastructure grid, and if we can do without it, I'm good with that. But if we can't, I don't want to do it. And what's the proposal for finding that out from council tonight? I mean, knowing what the ask is in terms of connecting with the community, I'd like to hear more from the other council about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll take this opportunity to jump in at this time and say that I think that Councilmember Healy's proposal of removing some of the costs for the trolley is a reasonable ask and thing to do at this point, just because of the fact that the trolley tracks have been, built over in farther down the line. I do think that there are a lot of businesses that are on that street that for whom this is a very big diversion from where they think their work and deliveries are coming from. I think we could not go forward with what is being suggested, although I think it has a lot of merit, without having a really in-depth community discussion of the people who live and work in that area. And I think that it would be, I don't think making the upgrades and improvements to that street with the reductions that Councilmember Healy brought up, I think that would not preclude what Councilmember Barnacle was looking for in that area. But I think it is work that needs to be done for the businesses that are located there. And then that conversation of what the future look or use of that road is, I think we need to look at. So that's my opinion on this, and I'll call on Councilmember King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate this discussion. I'm prepared to support the staff recommendation with the limitations mentioned by both the mayor and Councilmember Healy, although I do appreciate the discussion and would hope that some of those ideas could be brought forward if this project goes forward. But what I heard and read in the staff report, and I know this area fairly well, it's an area I walk and have walked for well, the whole time I've been in Petaluma, and it is not a great place to walk. As noted, there are places where there are sidewalk gaps, significant sidewalk gaps. It, to me, is not particularly unsafe if you are paying attention, because I don't think it generally gets a ton of traffic at all times of the day. It really depends on when you're there. I think during commercial hours, it's a little busier than, say, late afternoon, early evening. But it's an area that, in terms of infrastructure, needs a lot of work. But what I did hear tonight from staff, and what I did read in the report, are the safety issues, the closure, the concern about toxics falling into the river. And I do have concern about traffic circulation. There are businesses down there that need to have access to vehicular traffic, not to mention the residents. And I cannot imagine taking action in a different direction without substantial public engagement down there. So my view would be to go forward with this, with those comments that were made by Councilmember Healy. I don't know how we do that exactly, unless we make a motion along those lines. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Now, Gina, you still have your hand up. Did you have something more to say?
Yeah, I can, unless Christopher's got his hand up, and I'll defer to Christopher, and I'll fill in any gaps if I hear anything.
Thank you. Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett. A couple, three things to think about here. Want you to know we're listening closely. We could, in fact, redesign the piling in consideration of saving that 10 to 15%. If in fact we do want to close the door on the possibility of using the tracks for the trolley, et cetera. That would take a little time, but it could be done. We could try to expedite that in the hopes of saving that 10 to 15%. Secondly, it's not eligible for state bridge grants because it doesn't meet the federal criteria for bridges, which requires a 20-foot span. The federal government defines bridges as 20 feet or greater in span. This one's just shy of that, I think at about 19 feet or so. So that requires basically all local funds unless we can find other dollars available. And there really aren't many grant sources for small bridges like this. Another consideration is emergency medical services, particularly fire with a through route and a turnaround and so forth. That's something to think about. And then I want to just point out that we have a limited window with permitting. The permits that we've acquired give us a pretty defined construction window. And if we can't get going on construction, for example, there's a 3-month lead on the construction of the precast arch structure. So that order would have to be placed here very shortly in order to meet the seasonal requirements for construction this year. And then secondly, the costs of construction for bridges in particular, like this, are not going down. In fact, they're rising rapidly due to demands and unusual things happening within the heavy highway construction industry. So I just wanted to make sure we're all aware of those factors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll take it back to Councilmember Barnacle. So you can either make a motion or decide how you'd like to go forward on this.
Well, I think I see where my votes would be if I made a motion, so I'm not going to do that. But I do want to share. I spoke to a resident who was walking by, and he asked, "What's going on here?" And I said, "Oh, the bridge is failing and it needs to be replaced. It's unsafe to have cars driving over it. As you can see, it's dilapidated." He said, "Yeah." And then I explained to him that it was $2 million to replace it. And he said, explicitive. I can't believe it's that much. He said, "We'll learn to live with it. Like we've got bigger problems." And that's kind of how I feel. And, I'm looking literally at the map right now of the overhead of the vehicle or the businesses there. And as bad as I feel for pulling this and sort of doing what I feel is a bait and switch, which I don't like doing and I don't feel good about it. When something comes in, double your estimate, it feels like it's a good time to take a step back and think outside of the box, to ask the community and let them know, hey, this is going to be double the cost, and that's going to come at the expense of $1 million of road work elsewhere in the city. And if we're not taking a step back when something's double our anticipated cost on a street like this, where there's plenty of alternatives for circulation, like when will we? And, on a project that's been, identified 9 years ago. And so as bad as I feel for doing this, it feels like it's, the prudent thing to do with our taxpayer money to, at least explore, like, do we need this bridge, right, to have all of these structural features? Or is this an opportunity for us to start aligning our spending with our climate goals and save, put another $1 million into fixing the potholes in front of someone else's house? So that's my final play. I guess I could make a motion. It's probably going to get voted down, but I'll make a motion to pull this item, and do community outreach to determine if the neighbors are supportive of turning this into a pedestrian area, and maintaining the circulation that is currently there. And yeah.
Okay, and Mr. Healy, I'm going to jump in front of you and call on Councilmember Fisher because I think she wants to maybe second this.
I will second that.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a motion on the floor, and Mr. Healy has his hand up for discussion. Or I don't know.
Well, I was going to offer a different motion, and I don't think we need to play parliamentary games. I won't make a substitute motion. Let's vote on this one, and if
Okay.
it fails, you can come back to me, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, are we going to take public comment on this item first?
We already took public comment on the consent calendar in whole.
Thank you.
Yes. So with that, I will ask the interim city clerk to please take a roll call vote.
Mayor Barrett,
No.
Council members Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
No.
King,
No.
McDonald,
No.
Buzzake,
Yes.
the motion fails.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy.
Thank you. So I will make a motion to approve the item with direction to staff to pursue a change order, if at all possible, to reduce the costs of this project by taking out the design elements necessary to support the trolley in that location. Thank you.
And Councilmember Fisher.
Well, I'll second that. If I can offer a friendly amendment to not put sharrows on the street and encourage cycling as per the staff's recommendation.
That's fine.
Okay, so there's a motion by Healy, amended by Fisher, and seconded by Fisher. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Barrett,
Yes.
Council members Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Nope.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Buzzake.
No.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, and so with that, we are finished with the consent calendar. And we can go on to new business. And at this time, I would like to say that there are 16 people on the Zoom audience at this time. So with new business, we have item 4A, resolution recommending appointments to the Mayors and Council Members Association to fill vacancies on regional bodies. So,
Mayor?
Yes, City Manager.
So this item tonight seeks council's recommendation of applicants to the Mayor and Council Members Association to fill vacancies on various local and regional boards or commissions when the terms of office expire or upon resignations. Letters of interest are circulated to all cities by those elected officials wishing to serve, followed by the cities voting on the recommendations at an upcoming meeting like tonight. The deadline for submitting letters was January 19th, and we received one letter from Mayor Ozzie Jimenez for the Sonoma County Ag Preservation Open Space District Citizens Advisory Committee, and that is the only letter we've received to date.
Okay, thank you very much for that, which means that the Sonoma County Airport Land Commission position has a vacancy and no one has applied for it. So I am not seeing anybody has their, oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember McDonald.
Sorry, late breaking there. So the way this organization, can I ask how this organization moves forward? If there are vacancies, do the mayors have the opportunity, does the council need to weigh in, or can we give our mayor the latitude to vote as opportunity provides on?
In the past, and it's not very clear, but in the past, if there is no applicant and somebody does come to the meeting and throws their name in, the mayors have the right to vote on that. And if they get a majority, they can go ahead and fill that position.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. So I'm going to see, I'm going to ask the clerk if she's received any any public comment on this item.
Madam Mayor, there was no comments received.
Thank you. And I will ask our moderator to see if there's anyone in the public who would like to speak to this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand in Zoom and you'll be called on in turn. Looking at our attendees, I see one hand raised, so I will share my screen. And I will call on Taryn Obeid to be our first speaker. Taryn, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Sorry, I was actually going to comment to commend out of the box non-status quo thinking by Councilmember Barnacle in the last thing, which I thought got pulled, and so it merited its own comment.
Okay, do you have any comments on this item, Taryn?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. So Madam Mayor, that is the only hand raised, so I'll turn it back to you. You're muted, Madam Mayor.
We will close public comment on this item and bring it back to, for a Councilmember McDonald.
Yeah, I just want to make the motion for you.
Okay, there's a motion by McDonald, and I'll go to the Vice Mayor,
I'll second the motion.
and a second by the Vice Mayor Posake, and we will have a roll call vote by the City Clerk.
Mayor Barrett,
Yes.
and Council Members Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Posake.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're on to public hearing. And this is item 5A, and this is a public hearing to levy an annual assessment for fiscal year 2022 annual assessment for the downtown Petaluma Business Improvement District.
I'm sorry, excuse me, but I think we skipped over 4B.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry.
Thanks.
Yes, we did. I am so sorry. So item 4B, and that is the introduction, first reading of an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease agreement with Basin Street Properties for 1,015 square feet of additional office space for fire department administrative offices at 151 Second Street. And the Assistant City Manager, Brian Cochran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council members. The item before you, as the mayor just read off, is the introduction of an ordinance to approve a lease for additional office space for the fire department. The existing administrative offices that are contained within our circa 1938 Fire Station 1 are inadequate for the fire department's current and future staffing needs. The existing offices are already overbooked, oversubscribed, and with the assistance of Measure U, we are a growing and rebuilding city, and we will be adding a couple of new positions in the fire department. We also have battalion chiefs and other staff who are occasionally working on special projects, grant applications, as well as personnel on light duty who need to use office space to complete their tasks. And so with that, the fire department was able to identify an office space that is just a few doors down from the existing Fire Station 1, so it would be convenient operationally. It's also the correct size to accommodate the additional staff and the additional needs of the fire department, and that is the 151 Second Street address. So the lease itself is a 2-year lease. Monthly payments are just over $2,200 per month. And that would get us through about March of 2024. We also mentioned in the staff report, we are looking at longer term planning efforts to look at where future fire stations may need to be located, as well as office space for the fire department. So we view this as a bit of a bridge or a gap solution until we can get to that future state for our fire department and their administrative needs. And with that, I think I'll conclude my presentation, and I'm available for questions, as is our interim fire chief, Jeff Schock. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I really apologize for stepping over this one. Are there any questions from council members? I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand. So I will ask our interim city clerk if she has received any comments on this item.
Madam Mayor, no comments were received on this item.
Thank you very much. And I will ask our moderator to see if there's anybody in the Zoom audience who would like to speak in public comment on this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand in Zoom and you'll be called on in turn. I see one hand raised, so I will share the screen and call on Taryn Obaid, followed by Recusant. Taryn, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Hi, thanks, Patrick. Hanging out with you guys for the entire evening. This comment is not necessarily on opposition, but it's to broaden our thinking. I used to live in Basin Street when I first landed in Petaluma before we bought our house. I can tell you that the semis go down East Street, not F Street. So that'd be a nice park there. But walking by the fire department is, and looking in their garage, there are jet skis, is workout equipment. It's like, pardon me, it's a bit cluttered. And so I would love for us to really look closely at what is needed here. COVID hit and we're all telecommuting, yet we're bloating, we're expanding out. And fires aren't a huge thing in Petaluma, is my observation, or are they? I don't know, but I don't see any discussion about how many fires are there. Does this merit growing? Does this merit another $25,000 a year? Again, that might not be much to the city, but I see that as big money. Yeah, so I'd like to see more detailed, close discussion. You know, when you're in business and you're asking for more money, your board of directors, your manager asks the hard questions and goes in and takes the look around. City council can't do that, but I really would hope that these discussions are happening, that hard questions are being asked, and that we're taking every opportunity to not just go along to get along, to not just be status quo. Times are changing. Things are gonna get real tough real soon. And the money is important. And, you know, do we need that workout equipment over there at the fire department? Do we need all of those jet skis? These are questions that I'd like us to think about a little bit more before we keep throwing money at stuff. Because if you look at all of these little decisions, $25,000 here, $50,000 here, $60,000 for the synthetic chemical investigation when we could have got that free. Andrew Campanelli would have been less cost than telecom law firm. It adds up quickly, and we could save $1 million easily. So that's it. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I would like to see more discussion, more examination, and some real robust cost benefit analysis for these decisions, just like we do in business, where money really matters. And I say that respectfully, you guys, and thank you.
Thank you, Taryn. Our next speaker is Rakusan. You may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you. Just speaking to this fire department issue, you know, we had heard some rumors about the Petaluma Creamery being enlisted as a long-term solution for the fire department, and just want to kind of oppose that idea. So I know this, what we're talking about is a temporary measure, and I appreciate Taryn's insights about really thinking about, you know, what this budget is being used for, what kind of visibility the public gets. It seems like a small item, and you know, I'm for all four firefighters. We love firefighters, but we want to make sure the money is being well spent, that the long-term planning doesn't inhibit any or impinge on any Petaluma landmarks or affect anything negatively. And also just want to put out there about, involving the public. Obviously, this is a city council meeting. It's 9 at night here on a Monday. A lot of people I talk to don't necessarily know the meetings are going on. So as we have a lot of these discussions about involving the public, and I appreciate having the time to speak in this open format, but just want to put out there maybe the idea of kind of getting the word out about these meetings and getting more public input. So, by the end of this, when budget items are still getting discussed and things, that there are people than just Taryn, myself, Brian G kind of involved, because I think there were a lot more voices that would like to be heard on this fire department issue and others. So thank you. I'll yield the remainder of our time.
Thank you for that. And that is the last hand raised. So I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll close public comment on item 4B, and I will go back to our Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to quickly follow up on some of those comments from the public. And yes, as I mentioned during my presentation, this very much is an interim solution for us. We are engaging now in a analytical process to look at our fire stations, look at where the optimal placements are, what the additional needs are for the department. And so that it will be a very rigorous, very deliberative process as we try to optimize our fire and EMS operations out into the future. So those that analysis will be happening. This is really just the 2 years from now until 2024. While we're doing that process, while we're doing that analysis to get the fire department the space that it needs. I would generally say that the department does need the equipment that was mentioned. For example, we need workout space for our firefighters to maintain their physical health and well-being. And some of the other equipment, I wanted to just see if our interim chief wanted to talk about the jet skis or any of the other tools and equipment that the fire department needs.
Thanks, Brian. Yes, we do not have a jet ski at fire headquarters. We don't have a jet ski at the fire department. I believe what may have been seen is a water rescue craft. It's a Zodiac style boat with an outboard motor that we use for water rescues in the Petaluma River, or when there's a medical incident on a boat within the river. So it's a small inflatable that's always inflated boat that we have at that fire headquarters facility. And yes, we do have some workout equipment. Unfortunately, it's in the apparatus bay. It'd be better not in the apparatus bay, but that's the only spot we have. And that is, as you mentioned, to maintain physical and mental well-being firefighters on duty for minimum 24 hours, 48 hours at a time. So happy to answer any other questions though. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And okay, you're done as well. Thank you. Council Member Fisher.
I don't have any questions. I was going to go ahead and move approval of the item.
So we have a motion by Fisher and Council Member McDonald.
I'd like to second that motion and also comment that Measure U was supported in part because of the need for improved fire facilities. And so I'm really looking forward to that fire facility report as we move forward with Measure U expenditures. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Fisher and a second by McDonald, and I will ask our interim city clerk to do a roll call vote.
Mayor Barrett,
Yes.
Council Members Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Ely,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Hussake.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. And now I will go back to where I already have been. Sorry. Opening a public hearing on to levy an annual assessment for fiscal year 2022, annual assessment for the downtown Petaluma Business Improvement District. And I will turn this over to staff member Nancy Sands.
Before you do,
Yes.
I need to leave. I need to recuse from this item. I have an office in the downtown Petaluma Business Improvement District, and therefore will be paying this bid item. And my business address is 17 Keller Street in Petaluma.
Thank you, Councilmember King. And Councilmember Healy, you have your hand up.
Right, thank you. So I'm recusing for the same reason. And so I'll be leaving the meeting as well.
And do you want to give the address for your conflict?
Sure, it's 11 Western Avenue.
Thank you very much. And so we will say goodbye to our two council members for probably the rest of the evening. I don't assume you'll come back for the adjournment. So good evening.
No, good evening. I won't be back for the adjournment. Thank you, though, for the offer.
Okay. And with that, now we will hear from our staff member, Nancy Sands.
Yes, hello again, Madam Mayor and council members and members of the public. This evening, I am asking you to hold a required public hearing to take public comment regarding the annual assessment for the Petaluma Business Improvement District. And I am here to answer any questions as well. Marie McCusker, who is the director of the Petaluma Downtown Association, is also available to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And Marie, did you want to give a presentation or did you want the staff report to stand as it is? You are muted. Marie, you're muted.
There you go. Sorry, I'm happy for the staff report to be presented as stated.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, I'll see if there's anybody on the council who has any questions about this item. Okay, seeing no one. Oh, yes, I do. Councilmember Fisher.
Yeah, so this is now the third year that I've seen this staff report come through, and then so the same information. And I just wanted to put in a request or a plug that as you're looking at spending those funds this year, if you could think about our climate goals. And we're putting recycling in the parks, for instance, that was approved tonight in the consent calendar, and thinking about the downtown and how people behave and offering them receptacles to do recycling if possible, and possibly even getting grants to do that through Sonoma, Zero Waste Sonoma. So just wanted to make that plug for where we are, where we need to go, and think about that as you're funding the downtown.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And staff member Sands.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to mention that we've already been thinking about that in terms of the public noticing for next year. I'll be working with the city attorney's office to really determine the level of, what we need to send out so that perhaps we can reduce the amount of paper that's being sent out. So that's those climate goals are definitely in my mind, and I'm sure they're in Marie's as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councilmember McDonald.
And consistent on that theme, I think having a bike corral at the Butter and Eggs Day and other major events is an idea, and I've asked Maria if that's working for this year, and I think this is a call for volunteers. So if people want to affect change, contact me or myself or Marie about setting up that bike corral. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, I am excited to see the Butter and Eggs Day Parade coming back on that note, and just holding my fingers crossed that we're going to be able to have it. Just in general, we're going to need a lot of volunteer support for a lot of the downtown business events coming up, not the least of which is the Butter and Eggs Parade. So let's all do some outreach and try and bring in the volunteers for that effort.
Okay, well, this is all very positive. So this is very good. I will ask our interim city clerk if she's received any items on this issue.
Madam Mayor, no public comments were received.
Thank you very much. So I will ask our moderator to see if there's anyone in this public hearing who would like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public, of which there are 12 currently, wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand in Zoom and you'll be called on in turn. I see no, we have a hand raised, so I will share my screen. And we will call on Rakusan to speak to this item. You may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you. Just want to get a little more insight into the assessment process. If this is levied on businesses, if this is a city tax, if this shows up as a sales tax, if one of the council members can comment on where we can find more information about the tax, how it is planned to be implemented, who it will affect, that would be terrific. And again, if it is a tax to be implemented on any wide scale in Petaluma, you know, again, coming at the end of the meeting with the public not necessarily fully engaged doesn't seem quite in the spirit of a public hearing, but I know everyone's kind of doing the best they can here. So, and you know, I have to plead ignorance into some of the mechanics of it, but I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you for those comments. And I see no other hands raised, so I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We'll close public comment on this public hearing. And I will actually go to either staff or Ms. McCusker to give a brief explanation of the tax, which is available on the city website as part of this agenda. Item 5, there's a link to it on this agenda for the public.
I'm happy to answer that question. The Business Improvement District is an assessment that was created in the early 2000s. It is a levy on businesses within the downtown Business Improvement District area. These are depending on $65,000 to $75,000 a year, dependent on the amount of businesses that are qualified to actually participate into the program. It's not a voluntary assessment district. It's a levy that is collected locally. It goes towards paying for, it's broken into 4 components: security, beautification, marketing, and there's a small admin component to actually pay for its collection and distribution. The marketing goes to support the trick-or-treat trails, sidewalk sales, open house at Christmas, merchant events downtown that put people on the streets to do local shopping. The beautification element each year has different proposals. It goes to cover things like the Christmas decorations that you've seen downtown. We had to save up for a couple of years to put the additional ones downtown this year. You may have noticed them, and the additional banners that go up throughout the year. It covered painting for an artist to paint the garage over the last 2 years, and the utility boxes and some of the historical plaques that you see around town. So it's a small fund, and it does go all back. It's spent all back on the streets. It's not collected from the public in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you very much. I see our city attorney has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add to Marie's very helpful and thorough explanation of a few points that are consistent with hers. This is not a tax. It's a self-assessment that the business owners in the downtown business district have elected to impose on their businesses. It's not a property tax. And it, as Marie has pointed out, it funds those activities that directly and specially benefit those businesses, and they're allocated in the proportion to which they do benefit. And has also been, as you pointed out yourself, there's more information in the staff report in the agenda materials, and also the regulations governing the district are codified in our municipal code in the business regulations title. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so now I will go to Nancy Sands again.
Just to let people know too that this item was on the agenda for January 3rd, and in that packet we had more extensive information about that included an annual report that Marie and I put together. So that might be helpful in terms of understanding not just the legal language, but also the actual what happened last year and where those monies went.
Thank you. And our city manager?
And I would just add, Nancy, this is also on our website, correct? We have a web page for the BID. I see Ingrid.
Yes, I believe we do. Yes, but I'll make sure we do by tomorrow.
We do.
You can also find it on the Petaluma Downtown Association's website. There is a link. One of the drop-down boxes is for the Business Improvement District.
So we have links everywhere. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of ways of getting this information. So please, if you're interested, link up with one of those links. So with that, thank you very much for all the information from staff and from Marie. And I will see if there is a council member who would like to make a motion. I see Council Member Fisher's hand is up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move the item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor Posake.
I'll second.
Thank you. And with that, we will have a roll call vote.
Mayor Barrett,
Yes.
Council Members Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Posake.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone who participated tonight. This was a really informative meeting. And we really want to thank staff and the transportation or the technology committee for the wonderful presentations that we had at the beginning of this meeting. So with that, we are adjourned until our next meeting on January 31st. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Well, thank you.